When talking about a topic as broad and controversial as censorship, I think it's important to be specific, since, well, let's be honest, when someone says they're pro-censorship, you don't know if they mean they want to keep the F word out of children's books or if they want to reenact the events of 1984. It's important we really develop and analyze our own stances on censorship, and we need to be clear with our conditions of censorship. With that, I put forward my thesis statement: censorship should only be tolerated when it's done to protect people from hateful ideologies that advocate for slander. Okay. I know when people hear censoring ideologies, they get a little worried, which is super understandable, but allow me to explain my point first. When broadly looking at historical examples of atrocities, what is the most common denominator? It's the radicalization of the common people. No one is born a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, or an anti-Semite. They are all corrupted by propaganda pushed by hateful people, and that usually comes in the form of social conditioning and manifestos. Hitler radicalized Germany through Mein Kampf. For 1900s white America, it was movies and plays that depicted black men as thieves, murderers, and rapists. Basically, every kind of bigotry can be rooted back to brainwashing, usually in our formative years. It's for these reasons that I believe in stepping in when people spout hateful nonsense. No one is benefited by it, and it only serves to make people behave irrationally. Now, when I make this argument of censoring extremists, a common response I hear is, but if we censor and attack hateful people, then don't we become just as bad as them? And I would simply respond with, no, we don't. And that's why, insert group here, are degenerate subhumans. I want to stop that person from speaking that way, even by force. Wow, I literally can't tell the difference. Like, that was pretty silly, right? It's important we make a world where people can live without being threatened by extremists, hateful groups, and as long as hateful ideology is being spread, that cannot be achieved. I mean, good thing hate and intolerance isn't being widely spread today, right? Right? Now that I've talked about one side of the argument, let's shift our focus to another qualm people might have with my thesis. Specifically, the people that would argue that I'm not censoring enough, and by doing so, I'm letting evil things into schools and corrupting the nation's youth. My response may seem juvenile, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. Censoring art just makes things so boring. And since I used historical examples to argue my last point, I'll use it again for this one. I will be talking about the infamous Comics Code Authority, which will be referred to as the CCA from here on out. So for those who don't know, the CCA was a group formed in the mid-1950s that was in charge of enforcing regulation onto what graphic novels were allowed to depict in their art, story, and themes. The CCA was made in response to moral outrage being sparked from parents' concerns with graphic novels, namely that they thought it would make their kids become wild, criminal hooligans. They also thought Batman would make your kid gay, but more on that in a minute. Trust me, it's a real roller coaster. But who can we blame for this completely unfounded claim? Well, lots of people. I'll be real, the sheer amount of authority figures pushing this narrative was like really weird, but namely this guy, Frederick Wertham, a psychologist who wrote a little book called The Seduction of the Innocent. Seduction of the Innocent is a book that argues that comic books were being used to corrupt the youth of America, and it was widely accepted as a factual and legitimate piece of theory. It's pretty crazy how widespread this idea became, and how far some people pushed its ideals. A state senator used this book as a source to claim that, quote, comic books are more dangerous to our children than Hitler ever was. Oh geez, imagine what they would say if what Dr. Wertham claimed was even a little bit true, which it isn't, since a study done in 2012 by Carol Tilley reports that Wertham, quote, manipulated, overstated, compromised, and fabricated evidence. He intentionally used children in his studies that had a predisposition to crime from poverty and severe psychiatric disorders and tried to blame those things on comic books. He misprojected sample sizes. He even changed one person's claim from saying a character sometimes steals to often steals. And yes, he did claim that Batman would make you gay. And oddly enough, that isn't the first time this happened. The Lego Batman movie got boycotted in 2017 for the same reason. Man, why would I go pay a comedian when people do stuff like this for free? But unfortunately, even though his claims were unfounded, he still had massive support from people in the US Senate, and everyday parents who bought into his pseudoscience. And because of this, the CCA was formed. Remember the thing I was talking about before I went on this rant? Yeah, okay. So the CCA, in response to criticism and moral outrage, made a checklist for what was and was not acceptable to depict in your graphic novel. I'm just going to read out some of these things and let you decide for yourself how you feel about these. Ridicule or attack on any religious or racial group is never permissible. Yeah, that one makes sense. Wouldn't want anyone to be radicalized, and this is what I talked about in the beginning of the video. Good rule. Seduction and rape shall never be shown nor suggested. The rape part makes more sense. I mean, since it's drawn, it would be much more graphic than simply writing it with only words. So yeah, this rule makes sense too. No comic magazine shall use the word horror or terror in its title. That's just really weird and dumb. Why is that worth banning? Special precautions to avoid references to physical affliction or deformities shall be taken. So you, can't show disabled people? Why is that ban-worthy? Why is that as ban-worthy as depicting rape or spreading racism? Divorce shall never be treated humorously nor represented as desirable. Illicit sex relations are neither to be hinted at nor portrayed. Violent love scenes as well as sexual abnormalities are not acceptable. Sexual abnormalities is code for same-sex pairings. Reference to vampirism, cannibalism, werewolfism, and the Walking Dead are prohibited. Whenever possible, good grammar shall be employed. I could go on, but the point I'm making is that this is silly. There's a ton of other rules just like these, all pushed by the Comics Code Authority, and I just want you to think of a good book or story you've read that breaks some of these rules. It's a good thing the CCA stopped pushing this nonsense, or we wouldn't have half the excellent graphic novels we have today. Novels like Watchmen would be banned for gruesome material, despite it being an excellent series that broke a lot of boundaries and challenged how we view and write superhero stories. The 2020 winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Graphic Novel, Heartstopper, a very uplifting romance book, would be banned for depicting homosexuality, self-harm, and divorce. Zeta the Space Girl, another excellent series about a young girl traveling through space, making new friends, and seeing the unique cultures of aliens, and learning some life lessons along the way, would be banned for improper use of English, characters dressing improperly, and kidnapping. Beastars, the multi-award-winning series that holds a very special place in my heart for going into a deep discussion of how society treats multiculturalism and deviancy, would be banned for breaking almost every rule. Like, seriously, this series has cannibalism, organized crime, kidnapping, cross-dressing. I think it's safe to say that Dr. Wortham would be frothing at the mouth at this series, which again would be a real shame considering how acclaimed and enjoyed all 4 of these books are, as well as the countless others that would be banned by the CCA if it were still in power.
Now, I know a lot of people don't really read graphic novels too much, so to make this more relatable, let's pretend that the CCA was ruling on things other than comic books, such as movies or books, and see how many beloved series would be banned. I asked the question on my Instagram story, what is a book, movie, or show you really love? And I kid you not, every single answer would have been censored. Harry Potter has werewolves, banned. Percy Jackson has kidnapping and teenage homicide, banned. The Office has vulgarity. The Avengers has mass murder. Agretzko has divorce in a positive light. Banned, banned, banned. The fact that media and stories that people enjoy wholeheartedly can be taken away by some sort of power-hungry authority figure or pearl-clutching hordes of outraged parents is honestly sad, if anything. It's unfortunate so many of us could have tons of more excellent series, and we could have funded more artists that had creative ideas and to share, and we just didn't because of lies and misinformation being spread. I guess the point I'm trying to illustrate here is that media and art really affects us, and stories can change and shape our lives. We get a lot from art and media, and I'm sure there is a series or two that has really affected you, the viewer. We should do our best to preserve these stories because people will try to take them away. We need to protect artistic freedom for the sake of artists, writers, actors, and people who enjoy their work. We can create a world where we can see the full extent of human ingenuity in writing, and to do that, we actually have to, let them write. Thank you for listening.